Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Ed Fields here along with Rogan Smith. What's the matter, Smythe?
I'm laughing at your nasty story.
Yeah, that's what it is. Anyway, so, it's a little nationalism,
That's that.
So, anyway, the story of the week or the day or whatever is my man Flippin' Nipponair. Flippin' Nipponair?
You used to be here, now you're gone. Near. That's better.
Yeah, no, but I go with Flippin' Nipponair. Okay?
Okay.
You can do it. I go with Missy Elliott. I go with Flippin' Nipponair.
That's what she say.
You say Flippin' Nipponair. But I go with Flippin' Nipponair.
You used to be
okay?
here, now you're gone.
Who got the keys to my Beamer? Now.
No, Jeep.
I'm going with
God.
Zum Zum Zima.
Zim Zima. Oh my God, just stop.
No,
just stop.
listen.
Just stop, please.
My man Nair and my man Minus.
Hi, everybody, all of our wonderful listeners. And, of course, the all
First of all, you know what a major kind of... First of all, you have to call the person you kind of base down. And then they say to you, yeah, we'll put that in writing. Yikes. Anyway, you didn't see the thing, hey, Smith.
What's that?
Flippin' Nipponair's statement.
I read it in the paper.
Okay.
I mean, I don't.
But you didn't see it on TV.
I saw snippets.
Okay.
I saw snippets.
Mm-hmm. I saw the video. And your boy was having a good time.
He was, yeah.
Oh, yeah. He was having a good time. Like, no one can see us. We only can see them, but they can't see us. So, in other words, he didn't, because it was no restraint.
Yeah.
Right?
Probably has a comfort level of being, back home. So you feel like amongst my people, I can say whatever I want to say.
When I first heard the news report and they said, the union is upset about it and all that and blah, blah, blah. I thought, well, let me see what they can say because, I don't know where they're coming with. But when I saw them, I didn't know what it was. I just said, I just hope they're not complaining for complaint's sake, right? But when I saw my man Nair going on, man, I was let's go, Roll. Me and Roll was on the same accord. That's what's interesting, hey, because of those remarks, right? All of a sudden, everyone's in a line.
It's in alignment, yeah.
You're on the same page. And I don't know if Nair knows that we have a stop list. So he might have to be emailing.
See, now,
I
down with the calls for no. I thought that was just silly.
Here's what
I thought it was just silly.
What's that?
Talk about, there's a consideration about whether he should be on a stop list.
No,
I don't think
he
it
can be on a
arises
stop
to
list.
that.
But Nair might rise to us a little extra say shit. You never know.
No,
like how when you go, when you go through the U.S., they say come to secondary. When they take you to the back, the guy have to close his boot down. You ever see that?
I've been in the back a million times.
I did that once, man. Do you know that just a little bit of ink, apparently when they stamp the passport, with the entry, whatever.
The U.S. you talking about?
Or Nassau, I don't know which one stamped it. But when you close the passport, if the ink is still wet, a little bit of ink got on my visa. Okay. So it doesn't scan.
Oh.
It wouldn't pick up the scan. So, because what happened was, it did it to me several times. So finally I said, and one time they took me to the back, but finally I said, why is this happening? Why isn't it scanning? Mm-hmm. So they said, well, it's probably the ink on the thing. It's very sensitive.
Oh.
So, which is fine for me, because you know why? That line's shorter.
Yeah. Yeah.
The Bohemian, no visa, passport.
I don't understand. Like, every time I go through and I could go and use the kiosk, mm-hmm. I'm like, this is a breeze. Why wouldn't you just go and invest and go get you
the kiosk?
What I'm saying is why people still want to travel. I mean, yes, you have the luxury of traveling on your character certificate, right? Uh-huh. But what I'm saying is when you could just be on a shorter line, go in the kiosk.
No, that's what I'm telling you. The line with the Bahamian, every time I go, the kiosk line, because everyone is eligible to go to the kiosk now.
That's
everyone who has a visa.
Who has a visa?
Right. So the amount of people traveling with
character certificates
is well, at least every time I went.
That's not true.
I'm just telling you my experience. When I went last week, I felt shame because I was the only one on that line
that's an anomaly.
And then they called me. No, it's happened to me in the last 4 times I traveled.
That line. Well, I can't say that your experience wasn't your experience. Every time I go through, I'm like, thank you, Jesus. I have my documents.
In fact, I used to try to sneak to go down that line. Because they once you say, they'll say, because before, if you had a visa in 2 separate passports, right? You'd have, I have 2 passports, one with the visa, one with the new passport. So before that didn't play on the kiosk. Then they fixed that. So I would just try to go fast to the other line, to the Bahamian line.
But wouldn't they then ask you for the character certificate?
Yeah, no, they would ask. They didn't know how to get to that line.
Oh.
They would assume the thing.
I wish I was working there. Say, you on the wrong line. Go back on that.
But I'll tell you, you know what? Let me tell you something. What's so funny? So I went to the airport, and this is where anonymity really pays. So I went to the airport, and I went to the big Wendy's, one of our sponsors, and went there, and then so I did my order, and I saw everyone giving their initials, like R. Smith, R.S. You give your initials. So the girl didn't ask me for my initial. So I said to her, and you want my initial? And she goes, yes, Ed Fields. Do we have to go through this again? It's embarrassing, But no, the one time I told you when I went through, when they said to me, oh, Ed Fields, okay, listen, okay, yeah. So the woman came in and escorted me. So I felt a little shame because I felt this is preferential treatment, which I'm not comfortable with that.
Since when?
I'm not comfortable with that. I've never been comfortable with ducking the line. Never. I don't even want to argue on that. Never, ever been comfortable with ducking the line. You ask anyone. So no, I've never been comfortable with that. So I feel, okay, all right, no problem. So I get to the thing, they did? That's for special Sage.
Sucker.
Yeah. Special Sage. No, I deserve that. I tell you, I feel very uncomfortable with any kind of ducking the line like that. Because people are standing on line. They don't know what your circumstance is.
I was in Commonwealth Bank the other day, and they have a special line that says if you have like one transaction or something like that, and your transaction has to be like
express transaction.
Yeah, it's like express transaction under 1,500 or whatever. So there are like 3 people on the line.
Okay.
I was making a deposit, right? And so this 3 people were on this line, the regular line. So I went on that line. Then I looked over and I was like, oh, express line. Nobody on the line? Okay. So I went on the line. So the gentleman motions for me to come. This older fellow is like, how'd she get there? How'd she get there? I've been on this line. I've been on this line. So he says, well, sir, it's an express line. What that mean? What that mean? So he's like, well, if she has a small transaction to make or whatever, so it's like one transaction, she come on this line. Well, I only got one thing to do. I said, well, you should have come on this line.
See, and that is precisely, by the way, why I don't go, because first of all, in the States.
Read, and then
I know.
I'm
just saying, I know how we go. I know. I'm talking in a non-express line scenario where people make their own express line. I'm full of that, because they will shame you.
I said, well, you could
in your
have come on
case,
this
you had
line.
Was a legitimate line. But I'm saying that when you on line, if someone called, come, I'm full of that.
No, I was next in line, yeah.
Yeah, you know what I'm saying? If I know there's a less than 10 items line and all that kind of thing, I go on that line. Yeah. But don't be ducking on line.
But you know what it is, though? People don't read, They don't read. Yeah. So I'm not at fault because you failed to read in that scenario.
He had no grounds. But that's what, you've always heard me criticize, you go to the movies and people, you standing on the line.
Yeah, I don't even jump in no line, nothing like that.
And they don't even jump. They do a different kind of move. They just get the price of the money. Oh, that's you, hey, Rogan. Hey, what's happening? You all right? Yeah. Listen, where you going? Hey, little trans. Yeah, take care.
See, next time
you're buying tickets. And then no one knows what the movie is. How do you go to the movie and make a decision at the counter?
It's like stand off on that side and then figure out what you want.
Okay, you know what? Listen, let's go to the movie. Let's go to the show. What show? I don't know. Let's just go.
Yeah, some people do that.
Okay, and by the way, while you're on the line, you could have been making that decision. It's only 5 movie.
That they would talk.
Okay, what? It's only 5 movie. 2 is cheering movie. You ain't getting it up. 3 is cartoon. Okay?
Hey.
So just make your decision so when you get there you can go, 2 for sharp, please.
We gotta take
what time?
A break.
Let's see. What time? That's true. We have some the average reading, so that might be another problem.
I tell you.
We'll be right back.
But that's how it goes for real,
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. It feels our guest tonight is going to be Aaron Green, who is a leader in the LGBT community, and So we'll talk about things in that area and in the the gay pride parade, proposed gay pride parade. I saw a comment the other day. I'm not going to wait. We'll wait for Aaron to come on. I saw a comment the other day, and the person said, and I was trying to be as objective as I can. Well, they want us to respect them. He was saying about the LGBT community, but this is a Christian nation. They need to respect us. And I thought, how does that match? The reality is, it's like saying, this is a Bahamian nation. They shouldn't have like a Greek festival. One does not negate the other.
Well, that's not a good comparison because a Greek festival, from a biblical perspective, doesn't go against God's laws.
Yeah, I know, but he was dealing with respecting of each other's.
But you understand why I say that's not.
Yeah, I know. I know their thing is about, the God said. But what I'm saying is there are people who would say, well, this the Bahamas, they shouldn't be having these things and all that. I mean, what I'm saying, one does not negate the other. It doesn't mean that you agree with it or you disagree with it. It just means you're respecting their right as citizens to do something.
I wrote a column about this very same thing because I just didn't get the whole uproar about this gay pride parade. To me, if you do not want to participate in such a parade, you are free to not go.
You could be home watching, what do you call it? Delegated, what the thing name? Designated survival.
You know what I'm saying? There are people who don't support Junkanoo Carnival and they don't go. Or Junkanoo, they don't go. There are people who don't support the Rastafarian community and they don't follow them.
The word. Hey, Ken, you want to say something?
Come on.
I just want to say something real quick, right? I don't understand the whole fight when at least 96% of the Bahamian families here have a gay family member.
Yeah, well, 96. How about 100? Wow. So the point is,
I have several gay family members.
But the point, the thing is just, I remember we dealt with this 20 years ago when they had the gay boat.
Oh yeah.
Okay.
Oh yeah.
And my thing is, it's like, what do you think is going to happen? Are you going to turn gay? I mean, what's the deal?
That's exactly what I said. Did you read that?
No, I'm just saying. What do you
think is gonna happen?
Is there like a? Oh Lord!
I
watched the parade.
And
hey
now
Ken,
I'm gay.
Ken, you want to go on a date? Michelle, the thing over, eh? I file it. I file it right now. I saw the parade. I mean, come on.
That's my point. That's a hell of a conversion.
How is this affecting you?
It's. I would imagine.
I can tell you how a lot of people are affected.
What?
They're a little scared of their own feelings. Yeah. I did like Ken. Yeah, that's what happened. Yeah. Because let me tell you something. The biggest and loudest, and I'm going to make it very uncomfortable for everyone now. Yeah. Okay? Let me do this. The biggest and the loudest is usually the ones who yeah. I know a couple.
I know some as well.
I know a couple. Mm-hmm. And I know they know I know.
Oh, yeah?
Oh, yeah.
They know you
Especially one. He's one of the loudest. Mm-hmm. The louder they make noise, that's their internal fear. Mm-hmm. Okay? That's their internal fear. They're covering it up. It's like they feel that if they do this, they're safe. That no one. Oh well, no. Roganne isn't gay because she's very loud about it. Yeah,
she's very vocal about it.
But you remember your boy? I forget his name. I want to say Swaggart or something. It wasn't Jimmy Swaggart. It was the one in Colorado, and they found him. He preached homophobia straight through. Mm-hmm. They find my man down in Denver with a fella. He was doing, I think, crack or something with the fella. Mm-hmm. Say he was only getting massages. Mm-hmm. Okay? Well, the masseuse said no. Mm-hmm. We were doing more than massages. Yeah. Mm-hmm. Okay? Yeah, he had to resign. He was in charge of a huge church. Yeah. So he was fighting his own demons, and that's what people do. Yeah. They overcompensate. But it's none of your business.
I just don't understand this whole thought process that because I am against something. then someone can't live their life or can't enjoy what it's like me saying, like, we're having this whole conversation about the marijuana debate, and it's like, okay, I don't smoke Rogan, I don't smoke marijuana, I don't do drugs, period. But you know what?
Cigarettes.
I don't smoke cigarettes. But I mean, that if Kendrick wants to smoke marijuana,
Just don't smoke around me.
Just don't come around me. I've said that 1,000 times on the show. Just don't bring that around me, boss.
Go in your house.
I good.
Smoke yourself to death.
You
just save some Cheetos in the store for other people.
Yeah. Go smoke and go be happy. But I don't want it around me.
Yeah. No, so you know.
But I'm not going to stop you.
And I'm going to talk to Aaron about. I'm going to say what I want to talk to her about because otherwise we'll be repetitive on the show. But there's a lot of interesting nuances that I want to talk to her about because of, because it's going to get nasty. So anyway.
But I was going to say, do you think? And I'm not going to say how people should feel about it. I mean, everybody, and I said this in a column too, that I think on both sides there's a need. On both sides there's a need to be respectful. Mm-hmm. An alternative lifestyle is not the ideal for a lot of Bahamians because they do subscribe to Christianity, or they may have their other reasons, and that's fine. And there are people who do subscribe to the lifestyle, and they shouldn't be bashed. And I don't support that, but I wonder if it's a lack of exposure. Again, that has people.
It mightn't be a lack of something, but you know what it is? A whole lot of hypocrisy. Because while they're talking about Christian values and all that kind of stuff,
we fall
they're
down
doing
in other areas.
lot of unchristian things,
right?
Like your big A.
Mm-hmm. Got you.
You're not a big A.
Yes, I do.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
So I understand.
All over the place.
Yeah.
Okay.
So
I can guarantee you. Go ahead.
I was just gonna say, so you can't be so judgmental.
Don't be. See. I'm not a thing, but that revelation. What do you call it? Revelation. About hot and cold, lukewarm, hypocrisy.
Yeah.
I know that one.
Yeah.
I know that one good. And the reality is, don't open your mouth to say something to me about Christian values. And I know what you're into.
As it pertains to just one thing.
One thing.
No,
but not your stuff.
But not your stuff.
Yeah. See, I can do some simply juicing.
Yeah.
That's a brand.
Some juicing for life.
Yeah, juicing for life. Simply Juice. Tropicana. Belches. Okay? But when it comes to these other things, that's off limits. But hey, my other things, I can have tidy outside children and all that kind of thing. That's cool. That's cool. It's not a big thing.
Yeah.
I can thief. I can be thief. I'm a big thief now. I believe in thieving. I can be corrupt.
Yeah.
Okay?
That's okay.
I can be corrupt. But we can have a corrupt parade. But okay? But don't have any other parades. Let's not have any marijuana parades. We don't have you know what? Do your own thing. Do not infringe we talk about this before again. I don't know if it's in the Constitution. Every single person has a right to the pursuit of happiness. Right? As long as it does not infringe upon the rights of others. Just go with that. And everything will be cool. Imagine if you had to waste your time on a daily basis wondering about what other people do. You know what? I don't like them people who hang glide, I don't like the hang gliders. We need to do something about them. Because, when they soar over the trees, sometimes they touch them leaf. I don't like how they touch them leaf. Imagine if you just every day all you did was worry about other
somebody
people's
else
things.
is doing. Yeah.
And by the way, that's half our problem in life anyway.
Yeah. We too concerned about what other people doing.
And what they think about what we doing.
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay?
Classic case of, the Bible talks about this. Those in glass houses shouldn't throw stones. Yeah. So it's going to be an interesting conversation.
Any kind of house. Well, any kind of house.
But especially glass houses.
Yeah.
It's quite fragile.
But because when they throw the rock, they got to throw it to the glass that they live in. They can destroy their own home. Has that ever been said that way?
I'm sure.
I think it's always been thought of the glass being thrown into you.
No.
It's been throwing out?
Yeah.
Okay. All right. The fragility.
Because they didn't say those in glass houses shouldn't have stones thrown at them. They said they shouldn't.
Throw stones. So that's what it's all about.
Yeah.
So it'll be interesting to have. But, so we talked about Nair. Did we talk about Nair? On the radio? On the TV? On the thing?
Yeah.
The radio,
we did.
The TV. Okay.
He's apologized, and hopefully it's a lesson for a lot of other CEOs. If you have if he had issues with the way things are conducted here, and he has every right to have issues, but have those conversations internally and don't,
And also just craft
don't be disrespectful
how you say it.
in the way.
You can say that you don't think the productivity is high as in Jamaica.
Yeah.
If that's actual.
If that's factual, then okay, you can't debate that.
But but you know how we go.
What?
Sorry, don't ease no pain. See, in the Bahamas, I don't know of apologies.
I can accept an apology.
Yeah, you and I can do that, right? But in the Bahamas, sorry is a very tenuous thing, But because one of the things, what happens is in the Bahamian scene, is sometimes you get questioned on what kind of sorry.
But you
ever notice that?
Yeah.
What kind of sorry?
But
so now you have to explain the kind of sorry you're going to do. Yeah, go ahead.
But I don't know if you remember, you and I had a conversation several months ago, and I said, we were talking about it in the political sphere, right? Mm-hmm. But I said, I was explaining why so many politicians, when they air, are reluctant to apologize, because we say, oh, you should say sorry, right? But then when you go ahead and do the honorable thing and say, you know what, I made a mistake, I'm sorry. Now we remind you for 1,000 years.
Not only that, you know what? This is a famous one.
We treat you terribly.
This is a famous one. So. I've seen it over and over, and I've seen it with the FW.
That could be.
You know what I mean? The FW.
That could be.
Rap.
Oh.
Okay.
I was going to say that could be many.
Okay. I seen. Yeah, but you're supposed to know these things by heart.
No,
now.
listen.
What? Yeah, exactly.
I'm sorry.
But I say where the person made a mistake. You've literally said that they should you said they should apologize, and then when they do, they go, well, that's not enough, is it? That's the phrase. Well, that's a little too late, isn't it?
Yeah.
Or does that really?
Who makes you the authority on the
the timing?
The timing of the apology, unless you take 10 years to apologize something really grievous.
And here's the thing, and like someone, I was in a seminar today where they say everyone lies, everyone does things because they do it for different reasons. You've had to say sorry. You're the person who's saying, well, that sorry isn't really cutting it. There's all these terms.
Yeah.
Sorry isn't really doesn't really cut it, does it?
Mm-hmm.
Well, you've never had to say sorry. So how would you like if someone say don't cut it to you?
Mm-hmm.
We're just not interested in being compassionate.
No, we're not. And when our minds are made up, some of us, this is not everybody, but when our minds are made up about someone or something, there's no changing it.
And we're not interested in being, and this is a very simple 4-letter word.
Kind?
Kind.
Mm-hmm.
We're not interested in being kind.
No, we're not.
We just want to raggy you.
Mm-hmm. Because
how does one spell raggy?
R-A-G-G-Y.
That's how you spell it? Not I-E?
That's how I spell it.
Okay. We just want to make sure that we got the jump on you.
Mm-hmm.
Okay? And I was listening to in a seminar today, and they were talking about how there's a difference between being nice and a difference between being kind.
Mm.
And nice is where when something's happening, and we talk about this all the time, and this is a classic example. Rogan, I know that you have a very high odor, but I don't say anything because why?
You're being nice.
I want to be nice. I don't want to cause any friction.
Mm-hmm.
I don't want to do anything. So I'll just let you be high. Okay?
But kind
is I say, Rogan, honey, listen, I don't know if you're aware, but just maybe, do a little whiff on the arm, whatever, just because I think something might be going on.
Yeah.
Because what I'm doing is I want to be kind because I care about you.
Yeah.
Ken just checked himself. Yeah. I want to be kind.
He ain't talking about nobody in this room. Okay. This ain't Proud Central. I got to say.
He actually checked both arms.
Yeah, good.
I want to be kind to you because why? I care about you. Therefore, I don't want you going out so other people will say,
she Frosty?
How feels look at her? So and then they got the face. So I choose to be kind by saying in a nice way, not like, hey, something died inside you. Okay, no, I don't need to say that. No, that's not kind. Okay, so I would like.
That is a good point, though.
I would like for people to make an effort because I think it's easier to be kind. I think when you are not when you know what, if you're kind, it's over. That moment is over. You connected with the person. They know you care. Okay, when you are not kind and you don't say anything, it's prolonged.
Yeah.
Now I got to deal with your frowsiness every doggone day because you don't know you're frowsy.
Yeah.
But all I know is as soon as I reach the thing, when I get to the door,
you take a deep breath. Like, I got to deal with
one day, next thing you know, I come in. Listen, I just testing out the gas mask. It's just a test. I got this someone gave me this to test. Ken, you want one? Okay.
And then you offer it to Candy and Ken.
Yeah,
There's only one on
I only had 3. So you know, no, I can't lend you mine, because you're the problem. Okay. So it's easier to say, you know what? Let me get rid of this problem. Let me help her. Let me help me.
Oy.
And it isn't, you know, conflict and angst is debilitating.
Yeah.
Kindness is not debilitating.
No.
It actually makes you feel good.
Yeah, it does.
And this is why I say to people all the time in my industry, how hard is it to smile versus being...
Have your face all bill up.
Bill up. Bill up.
Bill up.
Just the mere fact that you say bill up, that means there's effort, because it's a construction. You're in the building business. You know what I'm saying?
We don't say build up.
Bill up. You had to decide, you know what? I ain't into this today. Okay? And everyone who passed me, they're going to have a problem with me.
Mm-hmm. And vice versa.
Uh-huh.
Yeah.
Okay? And so I can just have friction all day. That's what I can have. It's not good. Just be kind, folks. That's our little message today. I don't know if people tell you that. You know, I know people talk about being and, you know, have love. Well, I may not love everyone, but I can certainly be kind to everyone, you know? So we'll take a break. We're done the news. Erin Green, I don't know if she's here yet. She's here. Of course she's here. She's always on time. And we'll talk with Erin.
Quality.
And I, you know, listen, folks, you know, that's why we don't have call-in. That's why we don't go call-in, because some of y'all out there can't be kind.
Yeah.
Okay,
and that's respectful.
We made a decision. We're not fooling with that, because we're not dealing with non-kindness. Is that a word?
Yeah, you can say that.
Or if you ain't kind, we ain't want to deal with you.
Yeah, especially for a show like this.
Yeah, I mean, it's unnecessary.
No, it's not.
All right, so we'll be right back after the news with Erin Green. Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Ed Fields here, along with Rogan Smith. Yeah, that's right, Bird Weed. And yeah, that's how you get the name Bird Pepper. You know, that's not this is the Bombers. You know that ain't the right name. Okay. The bird dropped the seeds. That's why you find pepper. You find pepper growing everywhere. Okay.
So you have bird weed.
Yeah, no, I have chicken hen weed. That's what I have.
Yeah, but that's a bird.
Yeah, see, that's what I say.
You know?
Oh, that's so funny.
But this officer, I don't know how to get there. The bird was from there.
Yeah, man.
You have any Cheetos?
Global warming.
But you know, this is a kind of an interesting segue, right, into this, right?
That's funny.
Because what happened?
You have any Cheetos?
Yeah, you know, this is an interesting segue because we're living in the 21st century, and we are just on the list of, you know, things. We're the last, at least in the last 5. Okay, like Upper Volta or something like that mightn't be, you know, but they don't really even know it exists, Upper Volta. So I think we're determined to be able to say, for the sake of records or something, no, we were the last ones to do that.
The holdout.
So now this is my segue, Miss Erin Green, who is our guest.
Yeah.
LGBTQ. What else you got? Oh, what is that?
That's my T-shirt, man.
Yeah, no, but you can say it.
That's nice.
That's a cross. It's I know, but no, she has the thing like
the bird dropped that one.
First aid, yeah.
That's nice.
And the sad thing, I want to go into this weed thing, because the sad thing of it is all of the brothers who was engaged in this enterprise for so many years, they ain't gonna have no play in it, you know.
Well, like they're all they're all questions of social justice, right?
Yeah.
And who gets
they ain't gonna have no
deserves
play. Yeah.
what.
Seagram's gonna be in charge of that.
Right. That's horrible.
Yeah.
But I think like in Michigan, people are literally making millions already,
yeah.
John Boehner.
While other people are in prison still serving out
Absolutely.
sentences.
Do you know John Boehner? Remember the former Speaker of the House?
Yeah.
He's the leading lobbyist for the marijuana industry now.
Yeah.
Okay? So well, and I kind of knew that it would happen because I think his daughter's
But in
married
this
to a
instance,
Rastafarian or something.
I tell you
like
what, in this instance, maybe it's good that we threatening to be the last, right? Because then maybe we'll see the lack of wisdom in the global movement, right? And maybe we'll do things differently.
You're very optimistic. No, we're just going to be last. Yeah. Don't worry about it.
I'm with you.
We're not going to learn. Right? We're just going to be last.
We won't learn.
Trust me.
Maybe we'll see that, like just how you said it. Maybe we'll see that John Boehner.
Yeah, you're very good. You're very
right,
good.
Lobbying for it.
No,
while my brother's sitting in jail, rapping Tupac.
No.
Right, and crying.
No.
Right?
I'm sorry. Thanks for the silver lining.
But maybe we'll realize that lifting the prohibition is the only decision to make, right? It's the only decision that brings justice to the situation. Otherwise, we're not going to realize anything.
The only thing we're going to realize is that everyone else has made it legal. So we should do it too. But it's a very optimistic outlook, and I applaud you for it. Yeah. But that ain't gonna be the reason, because we have the CC involved in that and all that kind of stuff. Okay, so just like we're the last with women's rights, we didn't see we didn't analyze it. Okay, by the way, we're determined to be the only.
And we're proud
of
that.
Hold on. Hey, that's one where we not only can be the last, we're going to go for only. Be the onlyest. Okay, on that.
Yeah.
So speaking of which, LGBTQ rights and non-discrimination. So I think, and I say this very candidly to you, Aaron Green, who, by the way, I've known for a very long time. I think that the majority of Bahamians somehow have made a transition and are over it. I honestly believe that. Okay, especially younger kids. It's just not a thing for them anymore. Over the they're over the discrimination of people. I think so.
That's not the vast majority.
I just feel it. I feel like at a certain age group, they're over it.
I'll say that in a certain age group.
I think there are two different cultures living here at the same time, right? There are
maybe three.
and I think it's about identity, right? And there's a culture of people whose identity is deeply rooted in a biblical culture.
It's a biblical culture.
Yeah, that's right.
Right?
Well, that's antiquation.
And even so, I'm not just talking like the Christians who go to church, right? We have a practice of Judeo-Christianity here. And so you have brothers them that are sort of swinging between Christianity and Rastafarianism. They're still deeply rooted in a Judeo-Christian vibe. And that's a deep part of their identity as black men in the world, right? And then we got another culture whose identities are rooted completely and totally differently.
But you know what I don't understand about identities? It's okay for you to have that identity. Just don't make it my identity. That's the problem. You can have your identity. You can have your deep-rooted whatever. But the problem is somehow there's this proselytizing.
Well, see, in that Judeo-Christian culture
is proselytizing.
And it's this idea that the salvation is communal, right? Is this idea
I have to convert you.
That if you doing that, we all are going to suffer for what you doing. And if I use the religious comparison with the other culture, these are people who believe that their salvation is singularly determined, right? Like their identity is singularly determined. They are who they are. So we got young people who don't identify as Caribbean, or they don't identify as African, and they don't identify as Caribbean. And in many ways, they'll say, well, I'm a Bahamian. But what Bahamian means is completely different, right? So it doesn't mean rooted to Africa. It don't mean rooted to the Caribbean. It don't mean Jackson marbles and things like that, right?
I eat car conch or something.
But that's where the issue sits. What does what I'm doing have to do with you? And when we do meet, right? Like, what are the rules and how do we determine?
Here's where I want to break down that Judeo-Christian thing about the communal thing. Assuming that you have not converted everyone, right? As long as one person is doing something that you don't approve of, then you're screwed.
And that's why
makes no sense.
But that's why they love the Sodom and Gomorrah story, right? Like, look. It's just one of you, but we gotta deal with that because, right? That's why they identify with that idea so much.
Well, but you know what I'm saying, though, right? I mean, we live in a world of 7 billion people. So if the philosophy is, in order for me to have salvation, all must be saved, they're doomed.
But do you think that's what it is? That they're looking, as you say, in a communal sense, that they want to save everybody? Or do you think people just genuinely have, because they don't understand, a genuine fear of that community and not wanting that community to infiltrate their children for whatever reasons? Or
some people are converters. They believe that's their mission.
No, I understand that. But I'm just saying
that's a small few. A lot of people, these responses are rooted in fear, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So, like when I use the term homophobia, right? A lot of people say, well, I'm not irrationally afraid of something, right? But sometimes the fear is irrational, and sometimes it's the response to the fear that's irrational. It's reasonable for parents to be concerned about what their children are exposed to. There's nothing unreasonable about that, right? We order society with that in mind. Like, that's one of the priorities we order society with. Here's what's irrational, though, about this response. We don't seem to care. A lot of those people who say that don't seem to care about what's playing on the public airways, the radio, the television.
Right.
We just finished talking
about that very same thing.
They choose their fears.
And so to me, that's what's irrational about it. Because I'm like, hey, let's build a world where we can, to a reasonable degree, determine what children are exposed to. We could have a conversation and determine what children shouldn't be exposed to. And then let's build mechanisms and structures, cultures, and communities that manifest that. Like, I am down for that conversation.
Let me ask you something, and this doesn't really apply to the LGBTQ community here, but from what I've witnessed overseas, right? I find that the word homophobia or even transphobia is thrown around so effortlessly, right? So you have a community of people who identify with Judeo-Christian beliefs. They subscribe to the Bible and Jesus' teachings, God's teachings, right? And so they say, I don't hate the individual, but I do not like the sin of a man lying with a man, a woman lying with a woman. That's what my Christian values have taught me. Is that homophobia?
No, that's why we don't have. That's why we. No, wait, hold on.
But I asked that because I said in the States.
It's not homophobia because that's why we don't have porn on regular television, right? Like we don't watch sex. We don't expose everybody to that, right? It's not unreasonable for somebody to say, hey, I don't think a man should lie with a man the same way a woman should lie with a woman. Like we got rules about that.
Right.
That's not homophobia. I mean, and that's not irrational.
Right.
I think and I agree with that. What becomes irrational is when you shoot somebody because you're uncomfortable about what they're doing when you're not around. What's irrational is deciding that you could legislate people into jail, right? Like, you're saying, hey, if we catch you having sex, then we can put you in jail. But it don't really work like that. Because what happens is, we see what we perceive to be intimacy between two people, and then we presume that they having sex.
Right.
And then we say, oh, well, y'all two having sex, and we got to put you all in jail.
Public sex would be public sex. It wouldn't be because you kissed or something, or you're holding hands. And so we presume that you're going to have sex or have had sex or having sex.
Right, so we live in a democracy, right? In a democracy, while the majority votes, right, in the election, and the majority decides on many things, inherent or integral part of a democracy is the protection of the minority.
Exactly.
Right? Just because the majority decides something don't mean you just do away with the minority. Inherent, like, that's a part of it. Just like how
the majority felt
being
about
human,
lynching.
Breathing is inherent to that. That's That's a part of it. So the idea that you get uncomfortable, you don't agree with, and it makes you uncomfortable that two people of the same sex are sleeping together, and then you're going to go and legislate that because they're doing that, they should go to jail. In a democracy, that is irrational.
It is irrational.
Listen, we got to take a break.
Oh, yeah.
When we come back, I want to talk about, see, the thing is, you talked about how these words get thrown around.
Yeah.
All words get thrown around, like misogyny and this and that. People just want to lump everything in a category. Anyway,
it's dangerous.
We'll be back with Aaron Green and Rogan Smith in a couple of minutes. Good afternoon, Ed Fields here, along with Rogan Smith, and our guest is what did I say?
Good afternoon.
Good afternoon.
Go on, boy.
I think that was like a blip or something. Anyway, but I'm country and down deep.
You are country.
So anyway, we're here with Aaron Green, who's one of the activists in the LGBTQ community. You know what I'm concerned about, Aaron? All right, obviously we have you on because the topic of du jour is about the Gay Pride Parade that might be coming up in 2020. Okay.
Let me just say right here, I'm not a part of
no, okay. But I know that we're just discussing it. We actually tried to get Alexis on, but she's traveling. So here's the deal. My concern is like a bigger picture thing, that when you consider doing things, when one considers doing things, let me phrase it this way. I fully endorse if someone wants to have a gay pride parade, I'm fully knock yourself out. I don't really care. I'm not going to be around any parades. I don't go to beat retreat. So it doesn't matter to me. But you have, okay? Now, my concern is to realize where we are mentally as a people and the impact of the parade, not because of the exposure, the level of ignorance that will be shown, that will be exposed, and the negative impact on the country, not the discrimination part, because that's obviously a component. Is that valid to think that way? And in terms of when one is organizing, you're still a leader in the community. So when one is organizing something like this and knowing what the swirl will be around it, so do you consider is it the right time? I mean,
even withstanding that the Constitution gives us the right to freedom of association, which means we could assemble and have a parade, whatever, all of that. Yeah. Organizers of events like these have to take into account many things. Let's put aside the mental temperature or attitude. Let's talk about the culture, right? When we look at a place like Trinidad that's about to have, I think, their second or third Pride Parade in July, Trinidad is carnival culture, right? Yeah. So
all kind of things going on,
right? So Trinidad has already been exposed to, well, first of all, the Bahamas and Trinidad are different because the Bahamas is like an Anglican, Anglo-based culture, and Trinidad is like a Catholic, Latin.
Many cultures,
Catholic is Latin, right?
Yeah, they got Hindi, they got everything going on.
And so the religious expressions are different, right? Carnival is right before Lent.
It's a Catholic
it's a Catholic vibe, right? Yeah. It's like a purge before you enter this period of
Bacchanal,
right, of repentance and introspection and thing. Our Anglican tradition is totally different to that. And we could see that with the introduction of carnival into this culture. The introduction of carnival has already shown us that Bahamians are uncomfortable with nudity. They're uncomfortable with bodies. They're very concerned about policing bodies, right?
Yeah.
And so the organizers of an event should see that this culture requires preparation or shift or sensitization,
evolution
for any type of event that even just celebrates, even if you don't allow people to wear their bikini, it just celebrates bodily autonomy.
It's a shock to the system for them.
Right. So culturally, you understand that it's a shock to the system. When you talk about carnival, you're placing a different type of culture into your culture. So like I understand completely why we get this pushback from Bahamians about carnival. Culturally, it's a shock.
Yeah.
So when you extend it even further to a gay pride parade, right, then you expect that
you're going for super shock.
Discomfort to escalate. Right. But then we also got to think about this. When most Bahamians think about a gay pride parade, they're thinking about New York Pride Parade.
Yeah.
They're thinking about London, right?
San Francisco.
Maybe Atlanta Black Pride.
Black Pride, yep.
In 2014, I had the opportunity with a group of other Caribbean people to be Grand Marshals in a pride parade in Iowa City.
Wow.
And that parade was also...
Because that's hardcore, farm, Catholic,
But Iowa City is surprisingly...
progressive?
Yeah. The march also had members of the Anglican Church.
Mm-hmm.
There were kids on the march. There was no nudity. There was no exposure.
But you recall now, the Episcopal Church in the U.S. is also very progressive.
Yeah, right, exactly. So what I'm saying is, though, not every pride parade or event in the States is the same.
No.
And I think most Bahamians have decided. I saw some pictures that friends and colleagues shared, and I was a little shocked, I say, because I'm just not used to. I'm a Bahamian. I'm a little Anglican. I ain't used to that, right? And I say, well, I was on the San Fran Pride Parade, and I could say it was overwhelming, right?
Yeah.
And B, I was uncomfortable in it because in my advocacy, I'm rooted differently. Like I'm in a different place in my advocacy.
Right.
And I'm an African, right? I'm a anti-imperialist, anti-capitalist advocate. And so that wasn't necessary. I was more comfortable in the Iowa parade than I was in the San Fran parade.
One thing one size doesn't fit all.
Right.
But the point I'm making and wanting to highlight is in the organizer's mind, and you will certainly have I'm sure, I know you're not associated with it, but I'm sure your voice will be heard on this, is, first of all, let me accept that there always has to be a first.
Right.
No matter where you are in time and history, something has to happen first.
So let me stick a pin. I don't think there will be a Pride parade in the 2020 Pride event.
Yeah.
I think Ms. DeMarco has already indicated that.
Right. Okay.
Second, this won't be the first Pride event held in the Bahamas.
But she's began the discussion.
No. We've had Pride. Okay, so I started my LGBTI advocacy in 2003.
This is Rainbow Alliance?
Right. In 2000, I was sort of pulled in. A friend invited me to join a group of advocates, activists, and community members who wanted to plan Pride.
Right.
And so in 2001 and 2002, we had a weekend Pride event that was semi-public.
Okay.
Right? And I remember that guys at the club, and by them who know that it was a gay club, want to know what all the uproar is about, and they walking past and driving past. So it was semi-private.
Yeah.
And so I say that to say there were probably similar events.
Right.
Prior to my involvement in advocacy.
Right.
People celebrate in different ways. Community learns how to take care of each other and fulfill its needs.
Right.
So, but as far as I know, 2001, 2002, we were planning a 2003. We intended for it to be successive, but then Bishop Green made those comments in the independent service, and we quickly shifted to an advocacy mode to address those comments and to ensure...
What did he say?
Man, so Independence 2003 church service. Bishop Green spoke. He was talking, and then he said, if Parliament enacts same-sex marriage, I will be the next Guy Fawkes. Now, let me say this. Years later, I had an opportunity to talk to him.
Sam Green.
An interview hosted by Controversy TV that was never published.
She ain't on the UA.
All Greens from Barbados. All Greens from Barbados. Okay. And in that interview, Bishop Green made the point to say, listen, I did not intend for those comments to be perceived as directed at the community. Those comments were directed at Parliament. Because...
That's a kind of nuance. What's the nuance there?
The nuance there is this, and it's very important, right?
Don't try that.
Bishop Green was on the Constitutional Reform Committee formed by the PLP at the time in response to Hubert Ingram's referendum attempt.
Jesus.
A part of that discussion revealed that the ban on same-sex marriage is a temporary ban that is maintained. Well, it's a ban that's maintained by Parliament. Aaron Green can't go to the court. Well, I could go to the court. I can do what I want. But the court is going to say, hey, Ms. Green, we know that this ban is discrimination, but Parliament is allowed to discriminate in matters related to marriage. If the judge is feeling nice, he may tell me, but Parliament could lift that at any time. Right? Though the comment that Bishop Green made was about what he learned about the law and the status of the law. he made a point, but the most important part is he made a point to apologize to the community and say that that was not his intention. And when he realized the fear, the angst, the concern that was raised, that he not wish that he didn't address it, but he did not intend for that to happen.
Of course, right? I'm sure everyone heard his remarks, but not the apology. But that's another story.
Yeah.
But again, going back to this thing about there has to be a first, and when I say first, I mean like you may have had these, but because the world is changing so rapidly, everyone is aware of essentially massive gay pride parades, and I assume that when Alexis made her statement, then they were thinking of a parade, down Bay Street. That's the image, right? So, but like the fact that she's pulled back from that, or maybe even intended that to happen. The point is, what's I suppose smart is that made it's a discussion. A discussion is safer than an actual, because at some point, it's going to happen.
Yeah.
So the more you have a discussion, in your words that you just talked about, in terms of not having a shock to the system, as opposed to the gradual,
Right. So you see this thing about being last, right? Maybe it's good for us to be behind the crowd or behind the pack, because many advocates and people in the U.S., in Europe, have issues with the way that pride and pride parades are organized, right? How they unfold, how they operate. And those voices aren't necessarily brought to the table. But in Toronto, right, there's a massive pushback by members of the advocacy community, members of the organizing community, and supported by academics and scholars, right, that they don't want police officers in uniform at their pride. Now, mind you, they've reached a place now, Canada Society...
Wouldn't that be everywhere?
Yeah.
And every parade?
Every parade has police uniformed
It's
officers.
about public safety and protecting the people in the parade.
Well, when you understand that a lot of violence, a lot of stigma, a lot of discrimination that members of the community, particularly people of color, face from the police, right? It has become a valid discussion, right? See,
Aaron, this is where is where things always go off.
I'm not saying that is what we are considering here. I'm not saying that at all.
No, it should, in my view, it should be considered anywhere. Because
here's another example.
If you're going to have a parade, you need a permit, right?
Right.
These are the rules now. We want to be non-discriminatory. We want to be the same. We want to, have a system. Every parade requires a permit. Mm-hmm. Every parade requires a public safety element.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
Okay? Terrorism, people planting bombs, So what are they saying? You can have police, but they have to be not
plain clothes.
You need police presence.
Now they have a security plan, obviously, that's been organized with the state.
Yeah, but that's where
we could put that aside. But the point is that being last isn't always a problem. Yeah. Here's another problem that many people have with pride, and that I would have with pride if we take on a global north model. I'm not interested in a whole bunch of corporate bodies being a part of pride, especially if they're corporate bodies that only think about pride when pride can make them money.
Or not lose the money.
Right, or not lose their money.
That's right.
Right? And so maybe it's good that we're not rushing in and adopting a global model. But let's talk about pride itself. Pride in the U.S. really is a commemoration of the Stonewall riots.
That's right.
And it's moved. The parade has become something almost separate from that.
50 years now.
Our experience is slightly different, and maybe our pride could be slightly different. Mm-hmm. Maybe we focus on the cultural elements of our experience locally and in the region, and we build a series of activities that speak to our experience and speak to our collective determined process of development, right? And it's all I'm saying.
To me, it's like
we don't need to jump on the bandwagon.
To me, it would be the biggest issue here would be more one of human rights and civil rights, et cetera, as opposed to melee, right? That people don't really know what the cause is, other than a spectacle.
Right.
Okay, because it's turned into a spectacle, right?
Right. So,
and you don't know the message anymore.
So give us some time to reestablish the discourse and not let the detractors frame it. Let's talk about what we are going to do and less about what y'all don't want us to do. Right. Because you may find out that ain't nobody really want a carnival-like parade anyway, right? Forget that don't feel safe with it, because we already understand those dynamics. They may not want it at all, right? And that's valid, right? There's been some pushback in the media from the community.
I'm actually very happy to hear what you're expressing for one reason. Remember the Rosie O'Donnell debacle, right? The cruise, not her debacle, our debacle. The cruise, right? Where it really exposed us as almost primitive. I say it in that way, with the kind of behavior we exhibited, right? And all it did was damage. Okay, it didn't damage the gay community.
No,
all it did was damage the Bahamas. Okay, and so I don't want to hear, I don't want to see a situation where the guys are throwing rock, just something, because
or the placards.
Placards are one thing, offensive.
Offensive. If you calling someone faggot, on a placard, that's a problem.
Right, especially when they feel like they've been invited to come,
yes,
right? And
precisely.
that's what you do. You invite people here, right?
Right.
Like, why you?
Gay people come here every day.
Right. Don't watch that. I experience it. There's a lot of growing that we have to do collectively, right? We got a lot of bright people. We got a lot of people with degrees. We got a lot of people that have been exposed, gone places, and know plenty things, and have great emotional intelligence. But we got to figure out how that works collectively, right? Like how do we grow that? How do we teach people that?
I want to talk. Go ahead, Rogan. You go ahead.
Get a question in here. Can you just talk to us a little bit about your experience as a gay woman, as a lesbian? You hear a lot of people who talk about it's very challenging, particularly in the Caribbean. They have this, of course, in the United States, but in the Caribbean, to be out of the closet and having to deal with archaic thinking. Just talk a little bit about what your experience has been, or what you've witnessed with other folks in the community.
So, I think I may be the outest person. Like, I don't want to do anything.
You far out?
Look here, if you know where I is, I well past Taurus, right?
Have you always been out? I mean, was there a time when you were closeted?
No, there wasn't a time when I was closeted. There was a time when I realized that when I had an interaction with a woman and I had an interaction with another woman, and I realized that I preferred this more than my interaction with men.
Sure.
Right? And so at that time, I identify as bi, and I probably still do. But I realized, like, I met some guys.
Really?
Yeah, I met some guys that I really liked, was intimate with, really nice. But then I realized that I'm not into pushing a man to be where I think he should be.
Okay.
Right? Like, an important part of loving somebody is letting them be where they are, right? And you don't have to baby them, you don't have to couch them or diaper them, but you have to care for them, right? And so I said to myself, imagine me, Aaron Green, out activist, out and bi, right? Like I dating women and I dating men, and this boy out in the club with his boys. And he see me in the club with the other partner, right? Or the other person.
Right.
This boy's gonna terrorize him.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
But I don't want to live that type of closeted life, and I don't want to push him beyond where he's comfortable. Right? And so I just started investing less energy into men. And I gotta add this part here. I am very disappointed in a lot of men in this town. I disappointed in women too. Don't let them make me think like ladies. If I disappointed in
especially you,
let me tell you something.
Me?
I don't know you.
Especially you.
I disappointed in you, Rogan.
I know you are.
I terribly disappointed in men. Well, first of all, because men say that they leading, and then other men who don't believe that don't say nothing. Right? But men say that they leading. Look at the foolishness that's happening in this town. Now, we got some good men. We got some men that are volunteering. We got some men they taking care. They cheering. Other people cheering. 10,000 BC, you could draw a line around your family or the community or the world. We got some of them, But how could you be a man in this town knowing that your boy is terrorizing or brutalizing or molestationing? Right? Like, that's how serious it is. It ain't just I molest children, I have a culture of doing this. Like, we have men here who are living with these by them. And I disappointed in women too, because we got women here.
We're allowing it.
And that's why Rogan and I have this discussion all the time about when you have these discussions, you have to be very cautious because I hear so many women who were abused as a child, and they tell me, and their mother stood by and watched it.
Yeah. And let's say this right now: women do everything better than men. We even do misogyny better than men.
Misandry, that's what it's called.
Yeah, don't watch nothing. No, they doing misogyny. We not hating men better than men hating men. We hating women. Misandry is women hating men. Yeah. We're talking about women perpetuating patriarchy, women perpetuating oppression.
Look at the referendum.
Now, hold on, pause. That is the sentiment that came up in the referendum. But the referendum was...
We got to take a break? We got to take a break, Miss Green. We'll be right back.
And I want to get to that question about the challenges. Yeah.
All right, so here with Aaron Green, we're having a side discussion. But we're here with Aaron Green. We're talking about, generally LGBT.
What did they do? I over here?
LGBTI. I add the I with the work that I do in. So L is lesbian, gay. G is gay, B is bi, T is trans, I is intersex. And Q. And intersex is what we the word we would have used is hermaphrodite in the Bible, right? Yeah. Q in the global north is queer. Q in the global south is questioning. Because queer is still an uncomfortable word, right? In the Caribbean.
Yeah. So we're just talking about it generally because it's amazing to me. I've been on the air now for about 26, 27 years, right? So in 1993-94, when we started on 100 Jams, subjects like marijuana and gay rights. Okay, so you're talking about gay rights? Oh, so you're gay. You're talking about marijuana, so you just get high. You smoke dope. That's how it went down. Okay? So what did people do? They didn't talk about it because that was the why. That was the why, but you say that, right? Because that's what people would do. They would then, you become the target, as opposed to you just trying to have a discussion. So we have, Aaron Green, leaped several steps. We could right. So you can have these discussions.
So now look here. Let me say this, because there's some young people out there and some people out there like, what are you talking about, Aaron Green? My life is hard. My life is hard. I don't see any progress.
Yeah, but they don't know.
But I think it's important to have this memory retention, right? I on the radio, and the only thing people would call in and say is, why you have these people on the radio? This is a godly country. Years after that, like 5-6 years after that, I was sitting in the studio minutes before the show began. The host was called out, and then the host came back in and said, look here.
You got to go?
These people say you can't do the show. I had an experience where the host organized the show. I called to confirm the directions per the host's instructions. The owner of the station lied and told me the show was canceled. And so the host was sitting on air wondering where I was.
I know who that is. But
right?
Anyway,
and so hold on. So there's definitely been a shift in terms of what is allowed in the public sphere.
Yeah.
Right?
To have that discussion.
Bahamians, I think their attitudes are shifting greatly. So there's a local group, and I can call the name, Speak Up Bahamas, and when the Buju conversation arose, the death threats, the foulness that was spewed against me and other members of the community, but people tagging me and telling me all kinds of madness, right? And then months later, there was a video with a little boy, a high school student, a chubby boy, and they were bullying him relentlessly. And the caption was like, they're bullying him because he's gay. And those people in that group stood up for that little gay boy, in this way. Yeah. And they denounced bullying. Yeah. They talked about how if he is gay, that's his right. You don't have the right to do that to him. And so you could see a shift.
Well, this is why, by the way, discussion helps, because the fact that you couldn't discuss it, you never was able to change.
Right. And a lot of my advocacy has been about visibility, and how that changes a space. But I tell you, recently and post the gender equality conversation, I'm finding more and more that some people identify me as trans, and they're very uncomfortable with it. Right? Like.
Not you identifying yourself.
No,
other people identify you as trans.
I would say that, you could call me gender masculine presenting. You could call me that. You ain't gonna see me in a dress. I mean, right? Because it'll be a special occasion and you may not be there. You ain't gonna see me in a dress.
But nobody's referring to you with the pronouns, the masculine pronouns.
Well, no, they won't, because they think I think I'm a man. And so they will insist on calling me a woman.
Oh, to insult you, to hurt you.
Right, because they think I'm trans.
Oh, right.
Right?
Right.
But I am not, I'm not, right? And it's cool.
Yeah.
And maybe I am, maybe I don't know, it's fine. I identify as a woman, that's cool. I just never thought that women were limited to wearing skirts or dresses. I just never thought there was anything that a woman couldn't do.
Are you comfortable? Because I've heard conversations abroad about there wanting to be a separation between trans rights and LGB rights. I mean, what's your take on that? Because sometimes people feel like you have different purposes, and so
sometimes in
conversation
within the politics of it, right? There are spaces where opposition is perceived. I don't perceive it as opposition because I approach the whole theory from a different perspective, right? I don't think there's opposition, but there are spaces where people perceive that there's opposition. And in fact, I had an advocate say to me, hey, look, in Iran, if you're gay, they offer you sex reassignment surgery, right? Because you can't be gay. If you like men, then maybe you need to be a woman. Right, and so they were like, and a lot of our issues.
But you don't have to be trans. They just. You see what I'm saying?
Right.
They try to find a loophole.
But there's a greater space where there is opposition between the trans community and spaces in the feminist community and people doing women's work, right? And there's a group of women who they self-identify. Nobody call them this. They make this up on their own. They're TERFs. They're trans exclusionary feminists, right? And they don't think that trans people, particularly trans men, should be a part of the women's rights conversation. And in fact, there was a woman, a feminist lesbian, recently was in a Senate hearing testifying. And it's about legislation to protect women. And here's what the thing is, right? It's like women's rights advocates have been working for hundreds of years for equity and equality for women. And they feel like this LGBTI movement has just jumped onto the platform, and the trans movement in particular has jumped onto the platform.
Cause confusion.
And is not confusion.
They're moving fast.
It moves in opposition, right? Because they feel like, first of all, you're ignoring women. And this is what these people are saying.
Okay, I got you.
You're ignoring women for men who are pretending to be women.
Yeah, that's what I meant. Like, if it's confusing the issue,
right?
Not that these people are confused.
I don't approach the subject at all from that perspective, right? I think that a person could be who a person wants to be. On this planet, right, like in 2019, where we are right now, with the experiences we've had collectively on this planet, what is paramount is that we acknowledge that people have bodily autonomy. A, they have the right to control their body. B, they have a right to a life free of violence.
Correct.
Right? Like, we have to focus on those. I am also a Pan-Africanist, right? So I don't believe that we should just go, like a teacher told a group of us once, you could denounce or reject any system that you want, but you need to have something to replace it. You need to have something to fill that void. So I'm not suggesting that we become anarchists and everybody just do what they want.
Right.
But I think what's paramount in 2019, with the rise of fascism, with the rise of the behavior that we saw in Germany, in Poland, under the Hitler's regime, we need to ensure that as a planet we understand, even in China right now, with the detention of the Uyghur Muslims in concentration camps as well, right? The UN just released a report saying that it is credible, this concern that organ harvesting is happening, that it is paramount in 2019 that we acknowledge that everybody has the right to bodily autonomy. And everybody has the right to a life free of violence.
All right.
And then we move forward from there. If Pan-Africanists want to reconnect to Africa, that's fine. I'm down for that.
Do you have a lot of straight allies involved in the LGBTQ or LGBTI community here? or not really?
In the community, absolutely. Right? In the community, there are straight people helping queer people. There's straight
in the Bahamas.
Yeah, man. There's straight people who see queer people who need work, housing. There are allies. There are people who are praying. I get random people buck me all the time and tell me keep up the good work. Mm-hmm. There are people that are funding small projects, mm-hmm. right?
Well, like
absolutely
any kind of cause, no matter what it is, if you don't have the assistance of other groups, mm-hmm. you're doomed.
Yeah.
The same thing like with the abolitionists, right? I mean, I keep telling people all the time, man, when the 13th Amendment was passed, there were no black people in the House of Representatives.
If I could be bold enough to say this, right? It's not, what's the obstacle to the positive movement? Like, the obstacle is not about a massive amount of Bahamians hating gay people or gayness or homophobia. Mm-hmm. The barriers to, if you want to call it integration or whatever, are far wider than the issue of homosexuality, right? There are people out there who want to be vocal and overt public supporters, but they're just as afraid
of the ostracization.
It's just, right. Again, just like in the South, where you would have all these people who are racist by implication, right?
Right.
Because why? They're silent.
Mm-hmm.
And so,
because it's scary not to be silent.
Yeah. And these imperialist systems, right? They rely on our fear. So these things like racism, sexism, heterosexism, right, which is where you push heterosexuality over. They are tools used to divide us as a people, exactly. to distract us, right?
Again, it's a thing of tribalism. Stay with your group, otherwise you get ostracized as the other group.
And but I don't think it's queer people or marginalized people's position to say, okay, well, we'll just be quiet so that the revolution can continue on. I could just let you chap me some more until you get comfortable enough with me. It's not the marginalized person's job to shrink or invisibilize themselves, right? No. It is the obligation of the minority. Like, if we're serious about revolution or change, community or positive development, it's imperative for the person or the people with the most power, right, to create the space. That's why, like, this whole dynamic with children, it's imperative for adults to stop foolishness and just say, look here, I am the adult, we are the adults, and we are ultimately responsible for the situation.
Well, in fact, that's the ultimate example of the powerlessness of a minority, right?
Right.
Because even though children may be the majority in terms of numbers, in terms of power, they're a minority.
Right.
And so the power majority has to act on their behalf.
That's why I was so disappointed in the statement by the chairman of the FNM in response to this vitriolic, nasty voice note that popped up from the chairman of Water and Sewerage, right?
Deputy chairman.
Deputy chairman. We expected, deputy chairman. We expected the chairman of the party that's governing the country to make a serious statement, a substantive statement denouncing that type of behavior, as opposed to coming up and saying, well, tit for tat, these
that's another classic example of tribalism overwhelming right.
Right. But it's the obligation of the people with power to do the right thing. And the right thing in that instance would have been to, A, denounce the statement, to B, separate yourself from this boy, because he declared, with fortitude, his keeping up appearances. Are you being served with unanimous? I am unanimous in this, right? This boy is so serious about this statement. It's imperative that the FNM denounce that, separate themselves from this boy, and say to the country, look here, no matter how you feel about politics, no matter how you feel about homosexuality, no matter how you feel about race and Africans, about an individual, this type of behavior is completely and totally unacceptable. Because how do I get scared of things. How do young queer people with less power than me, and then you don't even have to be queer, because little straight children and people with less power than me feel frightened and more frightened than me.
Aaron, look what we're saying in the United States. A president of the United States of America uttered words that would have been uttered by the KKK or these citizens groups in the South in the 60s and 70s, right? And 4 Republicans, 4 out of 200, were the only ones who said anything. We've gotten to a world where we've got almost full circle, okay, from being enlightened to going back into the dark ages.
And look here, the systems in play have made everything so convenient for us, right? Other people do things. Other people fix the road. Other people pick up the trash. Other people defend humanity.
That's right.
Other people demand decency.
Absolutely.
Other people, that's their job.
100%
right?
I agree with you.
And we have to remember that we have a duty of care. We don't need no constitution to tell us that. We don't need the Universal Declaration on Human Rights to tell us that. We don't even need the Bible to tell us that. We are a group of beings on this planet, a singular being trying to have a individual experience. But we should all know, if we all come from if you believe in the Bible, we all come from Adam and Eve, or if you believe in other things, you believe we come from a mother and a father, right? A first man and a first woman, then we're all connected, and we have a duty of care to each other and everything else on the planet.
Well, listen, we got to go. We started, Rogan and I were talking earlier about, I guess you could boil that down, and I guess it's the golden rule of being kind.
Yeah.
Kindness.
Being mindful.
Being
mindful, even if you don't like people.
That's what I'm saying. You can still be kind.
And we've had these experiences that bring us to this place where we don't trust people, we don't like people. But if you are mindful of your presence on the planet and the space that you're in, then you're doing the right thing.
Yeah. Listen, we got to go. Unfortunately, most people are surviving mindlessly. So I'll leave it at that. But
thank you, Aaron.
But thank you very much, Aaron, for coming on, especially at such short notice. We'll have you on again. And because like I said, the only change that you can ever affect is just by constantly, highlighting.
Yeah.
Because if you don't, then there's no education. You change one person at a time, right? Thank you for coming, Ken. Thank you, Rogan. Thank you,
Monday.
and we'll see you on Monday. All right.